I think, for the entire morning, we already heard a lot of overall discussion about China-U.S. relationship, and there's a lot of challenges and opportunities and on the 5,000 feet high. So this panel is gonna bring everybody down to the earth, and what's in the real practice, particularly in the business world, and how our business is doing, talking about U.S. company doing in China over the last 20 years, and also the Chinese company here in the U.S., what's their status, what the challenges and opportunity they are facing, and how, the next 4 or 5 years, what are we looking at it. So I think hopefully we will add a lot of value, and hopefully you're gonna like this panel. Okay, so for quick introduction myself, and my name is Shau, and I'm the EY partner at Ernst & Young, and leading the China inbound business for the, in the US, also in the Americas. And so I'm doing this for last 12 years and helping the Chinese company make an investment, make a green investment here in the US and also in the Latin Americas. Okay, and so we have a distinguished guests here, and we have Ganesh, who's the current CEO of NIO Inc., which is called Weilai, and is very famous in China. And we also have Mitch, and was a founder of Super 8 in China, and from nothing to all the way to 1,100 hotel locations in China. So quite an achievement. And now we also have, the important another lady, and we very well established attorney who is in the investment fund practice and helping a lot of Chinese company and the U.S. company in both the directions, and particularly here help a lot of Chinese company grow here and from nothing to went to IPO here in the U.S. So welcome, and I think I will give you guys maybe 1 minute each to introduce yourself. Thank you. Ganesh first.
All right. First of all, thank you for inviting me to this. This is my second time joining this panel. How many of you have heard of this company called NIO, N-I-O? Wow, majority. That means I'll keep my introduction very short. So as she mentioned, the Chinese name for NIO is Weilai. Weilai means blue sky coming. So we are a smart, connected, premium, electric, autonomous vehicle manufacturer. It's a global company, but people mistakenly say it's a Chinese company. It is a global company. I'm the first one to say it. It's a global company. So I joined NIO about 8.5 years ago from the little company called Tesla, where I was honored and privileged to work for even the first Model S was even launched. So I have seen the EV from ground up, what it should be. So currently, I'm the CEO for the NIO's U.S. business, looking after all aspects of the R&D and other operations. So we'll go through the more details during the presentation. Thank you.
Thank you so much. Mitch, go ahead.
Hi, everybody. It's nice to be here. So I arrived in China on August 8th, 1988. I've been involved in China ever since. I'm now involved in China both as a VC. I serve on the board of a couple of China-focused hedge funds. I'm also a visiting fellow at Harvard, where I'm researching the future of U.S. China business relations, and I believe that it's time to create a new paradigm for this new post-engagement era for the two countries to interact on the business sphere, and that's where my research is focused, and that's what I'll be talking about today.
Ruth, thank you.
So my name is Ruth Jin, and I'm a partner at a law firm. I lead the investment funds practice there, and I also do capital markets work in equity, meaning I don't do debt. So my co-panelists, they operate companies, and there's no corporation that can grow and thrive without capital infusion. So my practice is basically about capital formation, investment, and coming up with the liquidity strategies, not only for the private funds, but corporations. About 50% of my practice involve cross-border components, mainly China, Japan, and South Korea, Taiwan, Singapore, and some Middle Eastern countries. I'm very honored to be invited today to share my experience with the China Institute's members.
Yeah, thank you. And Ruth and I both on the both are the trustee of a China Institute, so very happy to be here. I think first the topic I really like to everyone to share. What's the status of foreign direct investment and coming to you and you from NIO, and I like to use to share what's the status of current your mapping here in globally, particularly in the U.S., given the geopolitics, and so many people already talked so much about it. But what's your current status and the global mapping, and particularly your strategy, current status in the U.S.? Thank you.
Yeah, Peter. Before I share my perspective, typically when startup companies start, the founders start in their garage, in a county, in a state. Once they start acquiring the first paid customer, they will start thinking globally. That's a typical evolution of any startup companies, regardless which country it is originated from. But in NIO's case, the founder, William Lee, had a different philosophy. His approach was, I want to find the best talent wherever they exist on planet Earth. Then recruit them, hire them. Then let's figure out how the company should be structured. It's a different mindset if you think about it. So Europeans, by design, they have the coolest design when it comes to automotive. So I found an American gentleman, actually, who used to work for BMW. So he said, okay, his name is Chris. So Chris said, boss, can I have the design center for NIO in Munich, in Germany? Power to you. So that's our design center in Munich. And the word silicon in Silicon Valley needs no introduction. That's where the innovation started, especially in America and then around the world. So I said, I want to attract the best talent from Silicon Valley. And then, in fact, I was hired personally by William away from Tesla, and I joined back in 2016, April. So this was the first research and development center for NIO in the US. It was started in late 2015, so it's been 10 years now. And then, of course, China is the king of industrialization. The speed and scale is, it's unheard of, right? China has proven it decades and decades and decades here. So we are a global company with a European design, American brain, and China body, loosely put. That's how I view it as a global company. So since the beginning, the US operation for NIO has been focused fundamentally on the research and development. Yeah. Think about it. All the hardware innovators, be it NVIDIA, talk of the town now, Intel, NXP, Qualcomm, you name it, all of them are in America, all of them are in Silicon Valley. It doesn't make sense to have engineers working far in, for example, in Beijing, to co-innovate with the ecosystem partners in hardware. So it said, I need to be present locally here. Again, the mindset is global talent pool. Forget about politics and forget about others. Because we have enough problems in the humanity that we face, so we need to solve all those problems quickly and most efficiently. So that's one of the reasons. Same thing for software. Silicon Valley or America is famous for software innovation. So even today, we haven't changed our philosophy. So from day one, NIO has an ambition to enter the US market globally, and certainly United States is one of the key strategic markets. The two questions that were not answered from day one was when and how. And those are being studied. And again, the geopolitical climate change changes every week. Now it's every day, I should say. So, but still our aspiration to enter the US market hasn't changed a bit. Because it is an innovative product and it is an innovative company. And the world needs innovations. In my humble belief, innovation has no religion. Innovation has no country of origin. Innovation has to be enjoyed together globally by everyone in the room and everyone outside globally. So our commitment is research and development in the US. but in the future, we haven't given up our hope and inspiration to enter the U.S. market with our innovative products.
Yeah, I think totally understand. Now I think particularly for the EV company and not just talk about tariff, right? If you manufacture the entire cars, and then like a BYD won't even allow that you get into the market here. Even though they wanted to pay 100% tariff, they're not allowed. Because I think that's another strategy of the U.S. government to really try to really help the local manufacturer, right? So it is totally understand if you put yourself into U.S. government shoes, and I totally get it, right? So I think an R&D, and I understand it is one of the strategy Chinese inbound company is doing is form this R&D is really leverage the global talents here in the U.S. and to figure out the way it can add value to the end customer eventually, right? So that's great strategy. And so maybe we come down to the Super 8. Tell us a little bit concise story about Super 8 and when you went to we're talking about the other way, and the U.S. company going to the China and, say 20 years ago compared to right now, and what's the challenge, what's the pro and the con right now? Thank you.
Well, first of all, when we built Super 8 in China, China did not have franchising as a model. It didn't have economy hotel chains as a model. There was no franchise law. And the focus was on China attracting foreign direct investment. The story today is Chinese investment going outbound FDI. That's the story. China has plenty of capital. China is not capital short. So I think, looking at inflows of FDI, that's for a bygone era. It's not as necessary these days. Let's just say that right up front. For Super 8, and there were only, I think, 4 or 5 Americans who were crazy enough to try to build a national business in China as an entrepreneur. I did it because I didn't have any choice. I thought that was why I went to China. I had gone there in the 80s specifically to do something like Super 8. So for me, it was kind of a one-way melee. But we opened our first property in 2004. We opened 3 properties in that year, and then 10 the next year, and then 25 the following year. By the time we got to 2008, we were opening 1 every day in a quarter, which meant we were opening just about high 200s every year. So for us, that is a terribly oversimplified story. We had about 25 near-death experiences. We almost ran out of money a bunch of times. We had a franchise revolt. All the Chinese competitors were trying to kill us. Everybody was trying to kill us. Except even our customers were trying to kill us half the time. Certainly our franchisees were trying to kill us. They wanted better deals. But the problem wasn't there. The problem was that in those days, because nobody understood what the model involved, it was a matter of translating the U.S. version of economy hotels to China and making it relevant for Chinese customers. And that's a model that is still relevant today, okay? Only I think it applies outbound. I think for Chinese companies now, the opportunity is to go not just to the global south, but go into developed markets with new paradigms, new ideas. For example, if you're going to have a tariff, tariffs are a terrible strategy. They're a great tactic as part of a strategy occasionally. And in this case, the way the U.S. has been using it is neither. It's just been a weapon. So the idea would be, in a second Trump administration, if you're going to have tariffs, it should be a cattle chute that forces Chinese investment into the development of American factories to help reshore American manufacturing. Look, American manufacturing flowed over to China, and now it's time for some of that know-how to flow back. And if that was part of it, that would create bilateral stability. It would be a win-win. It would be something that the business community could get behind. That's the new era, not so much FDI.
Appreciate your comments. Ruth, and from a regulatory environment perspective, and would you like to share some, what's the current regulatory change may potentially impact the transaction between both countries? Thank you.
Before Biden, everybody heard of CFIUS. So CFIUS only regulated inbound investments in critical technology and critical infrastructure. And this year, President Biden issued executive order and expanded CFIUS to outright prohibit some transactions, investment in China. So the CFIUS now can regulate, it is already regulating outbound investment in China, Hong Kong, and Macau in semiconductors, AI, and quantum computing. The significance of these laws are but just before I get into the little bit of a summary of the regulation, the business is booming. As Mitch said, a lot of Chinese money are continue to come here, so the practice is very busy. So I just want to make sure everybody don't get depressed about the laws. Having said so these laws prohibit U.S. money to go into China in these industries, and it not only prohibits equity investments, but also any type of intangible benefit. For example, you cannot give them knowledge. You cannot be sitting on their boards, advisory boards included, cannot be on the managerial position, and it includes indirect benefits. So if there was a joint venture between Chinese AI company and some kind of US company in Mexico, that is covered. So joint venture wherever located is covered. So these are prohibited transactions requiring mandatory notification, and there are some voluntary notification requirements for some other gray areas. What's the impact? The due diligence process takes longer because now we have to know who your shareholders are. Even if you're a clothing company, are you really a clothing company, or you have a AI involved? Do you collect data? So due diligence period gets longer. Structuring takes longer. Liquidity strategies are more difficult. So the whole thing takes longer and costs more. The price for capital is very expensive. So another impact is American money, US funds are gradually staying away from China. So previously, the US fund managers would form funds in Cayman Islands, Hong Kong, Singapore, and invest in Chinese companies because they had a very good view on Chinese economy. Now they're pulling away from China, and they're going more into South Korea, Taiwan, Singapore, not so much Singapore, but Japan and Middle East. So the impact is that the business are suffering, but still the Chinese money are coming continuously, and they're focused more on healthcare industries, biotechnology, some of the other industries where they're not regulated. So there is hope.
Yeah, I think even though there's a lot of not good news, but good news is Chinese company still coming into the U.S. and very shortly coming. And that's why I keep Ruth and I very, very busy, and our practices keep growing and double digits every single year. So I think the next question is for our panelists is, as everybody see, all the overall policies and talking about from U.S. and China, the geopolitics, China-U.S. relationship got very intense lately. And but however, this is a business panel, and we talking about how U.S. company and Chinese company can survive, still can make a profit in this environment, right? So as everyone know, and China has words talking about if you're not going to oversee, you will be out of game, right? So this means China has way over capacity, and talking about Chinese manufacturing has been growing or have been experienced for last 30, 40 years, getting very, very mature, and whatever you can see anything, and China can manufacture in a very reasonable price, a very high quality, and able to compete, globally. So that's the, my understanding is our Iyer, the Janet Iyer and went to China, was asked the Chinese government to slow down, talking about the production from the three products. One is EV vehicle, another is EV-related battery, another is a solar panel, right? So given that situation, and I just wanted to understand, have you, the panelists, to share how, given this environment right now, how you adapting this environment, how you really actually maybe talking about reorganizing your supply chain, and because the tariff, and because I think China talking about U.S. government was really have a big incentive into EV industry in the Biden administration. If you invite talking about from the DOE, and if you invite $100, they will give you $30 and cash over the time of your investment. And but if you're a Chinese company, you got nothing. Okay, and also if talking about the entire vehicle, EV vehicle, if you you will normally get about $7,500 rebate. But if it's owned by a Chinese company, even one share, and you're not able to get it. So that's the reality our EV company, Chinese company, is facing. And I know you only have an R&D, and a department right now, but see your peer or your observation and how people coping this situation right now. Thank you.
Yeah, I mean, before we take this dollars and cents about the credit, $7,500, et cetera, if you step back and think about it, right, I can share my perspective from both U.S. companies entered in China successfully and then vice versa. Traditionally, those of you who are familiar in the auto industry world, Chinese government never allowed any foreign OEM to set up their own factory, always demanded to have a joint venture. You put 45%, I put 45%, last 10% or so goes to the provincial government to operate it. That has been the norm until this little company I mentioned earlier called Tesla was invited. Is the only company, U.S. company headquartered, that has an exclusive factory in mainland China as we speak. Why is it? Just think about it. Why is it traditionally government never allowed a foreign OEM to come and set up unless it's a joint venture, but Tesla has given? The most innovative company in the EV spectrum was Tesla back then. 2014, when I was there, I was privileged to go there and then set up the first Tesla store in Beijing and as well as in Shanghai. So today, Tesla has over 1 million plus vehicles being produced from Shanghai. Now the reverse case, if you look at it, company like NIO, where it's most innovative, one of the coolest innovation is the battery swapping. Today, why the EV adoption? Everybody's talking about green initiative, climate change. They're a real problem. How can we reduce the carbon emission and the footprint? One of the ways through auto industry is the electrification of our industrial combustion engine automotives. So we have created a unique solution for swapping your battery in less than 3 minutes. Before you finish your latte or a chai from Starbucks, without you getting off the car, you'll be able to swap out your battery. Name one OEM or one vehicle manufacturer who is able to do that today as we speak. You've done over 57 million. So, I mean, countries like the United States and Europe and others will need to attract such coolest innovation, right? That can drive the EV adoption much faster, in my humble opinion. So, getting the tax credit, $7,500 note, that is an artifact in my humble opinion. I think we should be embracing the innovation and innovative technologies, whether it's a consumer product or others, wholeheartedly should be welcoming to set up here in the United States so that we can solve this and get to this zero carbon footprint mission much faster. Because technology exists elsewhere part of the world. Rather than, pretty much the entire world is thinking about how to build a China plus one supply ecosystem. It takes decades to build up that plus one supply chain ecosystem, or even longer. Who's going to suffer, and how are we going to take care of that gap for the next 10 years? So we should embrace that. There is a reason why Chinese have set up the supply ecosystem in the context of automotive, I'm referring to. I'm pretty sure in the other industries also they have many ones. So we should be open-heartedly embracing that change and then willingness to set up the factory here. The tax credit incentives, that's not the main issue. It is mainly that how to slow China down. That's a fundamental problem. I would like all the leaders to work together, business leaders and the political leaders to work together, negotiate it. Business term, tough negotiation is okay, but no, you can't do the business with China. I don't think it is the right approach, in my humble opinion.
Yeah, so my understanding, the end of the day, as a business, as a company, as a manufacturer companies, and the high quality product, unique product, is the priority or is the main competitive advantage, right?
Absolutely.
So this is important. And I just echo you just talk about. I know, Ganesh, when you at Tesla, you were reported directly to Elon Musk.
That's right.
And so this is a very unique perspective. We would like to hear from you. I understand, when Tesla went to China, and at that time, EV industry was just literally picked up, and I think the Tesla was basically the very first one starting doing the EV, right? And that competition, as long as you're able to get your products out, and the market is yours. But after last 10, 12 years, and Chinese that we're talking about, there's hundreds EV company in China.
More.
And the profit margin, I'm sure, is squeezed out. And what's your, what do you find what's the competitive advantage Tesla has right now? Or what products and you still have? I understand that you guys doing some storage, things like that, but you can share some light there. Thank you.
Yeah. I mean, China is the #1 auto capital in the world. In fact, China produces and sell more premium cars, period, than the rest of the world put together. Those of you who have traveled to China, when you see those cars, every car is absolutely stunning. Competition is much, much, much less here in the United States. Tesla and nobody else, at the scale level I'm talking. Of course, we have, Detroit, the famous three. I believe they're not inventing fast enough. Back in the Tesla in 2012 when I joined, 2011 when I joined, the fearless leader opened up the IP, and he said the IP belongs to you, because he believed that world is not inventing fast enough in the electrification for sustainable transportation, for moving objects and people from point A to point B. So he opened up the IP. He invited everybody to co-invent. Did something change dramatically here? No, it did not. Still, as Tesla keep rising to the stratosphere level, but the rest of them are still trying to figure out how to produce these electric vehicles, beautiful electric vehicles, at a cost-effective manner. Tesla is the only one who figured it out. So in China, the competition is fierce, as you rightly pointed out. They have a lot more nameplates than anywhere in the world. But the most innovative products and the solutions will eventually win. In my humble opinion, there could be some consolidation that could happen, that should happen. And then, in fact, Harvard, since you at Harvard University, Professor William Kirby last year selected NIO as a case study for their MBA business school as one of the most innovative companies, mainly talking about speed and scale and agility. Right? Those of you who haven't seen it, I encourage you to read it. It's well written by Professor Kirby. He spent years and years in China, and then his experience about how the invention goes in, so fast, lightning speed in China.
Yeah, crazy. Yeah, I know, and I think for Tesla is, I think looking into the Chinese market open for the potential auto driving products, right? And so that's the piece we're looking forward to it. For Mitch, I know for you have talking about Super 8, and you just mentioned the competition in the China is huge. Again, profit margin maybe there's, if somewhere in China there's in any industry there's any profit, I'm sure before you know it, there's hundreds, thousands of Chinese company will try to come into that particular sector to compete. So, and as a complete competition is real, and how given the current situation and particularly after pandemic, right? And a lot of U.S. investment is pulled out from the Chinese market, and also in China, I think given all different situation, most of Chinese customers is really become a very conservative, talking about spending monies, and so in terms of travels as well. So what do you see the Super 8 or any that industry, what's the competitive advantage there right now? And how you guys survive? Thank you.
So competition in China has always been fierce, right? In a recent article that I co-authored in Harvard Business Review, I identified the 4 key advantages, 4 key strengths of the Chinese economy, and one of them I identified as its super hyper-competitive market, which produces these global champions that can go out into the world and in sector after sector, not just compete, but win business in both developed and developing markets. That's an enormous change that didn't exist 20 years ago when I was building Super 8. So, I mean, it's not interesting to talk about the competition in China for Super 8. That's always going to be there. We've survived for, more than 20 years now. We're not going anywhere. We're good. But the more interesting question is, how can American companies and Chinese companies cooperate and or compete in the rest of the world? In that article I mentioned, Tesla is a great example of a company that went to China. Competing in China forced it to get its prices way down, 4 price reductions in 1 year, 2023. That was just to stay competitive in China. But as a result, the Model Y is now the best-selling car in the world because they can export the Model Y everywhere with that price that they developed in China. So the idea of looking at these things in terms of what's China like, what's the US like, this is an outmoded concept now, okay, Shau? What you want to get is to a proper worldview. The U.S. is no longer the global hegemon of the world. It has to share that stage with China. China is no longer in the Deng Xiaoping reform and opening era. Whatever you want to call this, it's not the Deng Xiaoping reform era. And U.S. China relations are no longer in the engagement era. It's a whole new ballgame, guys. And that ballgame means new thinking, new rules. For Chinese companies, the obvious one is you guys should be looking at ways to help the U.S. deal with whatever national interest it has. What are those right now? Reshoring American manufacturing. So much manufacturing transferred to China. Okay, help us bring it back. JV with our companies, the way Invenergy in Ohio is allowing Illuminate, this JV, Illuminate USA is producing 5 gigawatts of solar voltaic cells together with LongYi and Invenergy. That's a model for the future. That's what more Chinese companies should be looking to do. CATL with Ford, $3.5 billion factory in Michigan. They should be doing more of those things. And U.S. companies should not be looking at China as just a market to compete in, but as a way to fight in that gladiators arena and then be competitive everywhere. Cummins Engines is a great example of this. They went to China. They leaned into their 50-50 JVs. Every one of those JVs produced product that Cummins was able to take into other markets in the global south. And all of a sudden, instead of BRI being a headache for the US, for Cummins, it was the opposite. It was a magic carpet, allowing them to enter other kinds of markets with Dongfeng and Foton and other companies that would have never done it otherwise. It had to be under a JV. JVs and competitiveness can be a positive thing in this environment, but you've got to really approach it with an opportunity mindset.
I'm glad you talk about that, yeah.
If I may add a quick point, since you mentioned about the CATL, if you look at the electric vehicles, the battery is the most expensive component, right? That's the single most expensive component. Who are the suppliers for the battery? Either the Chinese or the Koreans, and there is Japanese. CATL, CALB, Chinese. Then you have the LG and Samsung from Korea. Name one battery producer here in the United States. Zero right now. So Ford tried to establish a joint venture with it, and it was shot down. So unless we have that foster that collaboration, and then the term, the JV you mentioned, right? I think we have to embrace and open up the arm to help set up shops here so that we can accelerate and innovate faster. That's the only way to get it.
Yeah, I'm glad you talk about that. I think given the situation right now, I think the customer here is really invited the Chinese company to build their manufacture here in the U.S. and either join ventures or have a service agreement, for cartel, right? And in industry, they are really have a service agreement. They do not have any share, and with a Ford, and which created another really collaboration model, which make that work. Hopefully, still work, right? And if that work can be replicated to different collaboration with other U.S. companies, that's the way it should really. That's the direction we should go, right? And I think all the Chinese company, U.S. company are very, very smart, very mature, and it doesn't matter how the geopolitics is going, and we'll find a way to survive.
Shau,
right?
I want to add one thing.
Okay, go ahead.
I'd like to add one thing. You know, de-risking and decoupling are, as we all know, are not synonymous terms in practice in most segments. That's a realization that's just now dawning on Washington. And this is the year that practical realities will return to the conversation on China. So there is some good news there. I would mention that if you want to talk about de-risking, if you're a Chinese company trying to de-risk, or if you're an American company trying to de-risk, look, if you're in a Brazilian jiu-jitsu competition, moving further away from your opponent is probably the riskiest thing you can do, because you open yourself up to all kinds of kicks and other things. You actually want to bring your opponent closer. The argument that everyone should be giving to their influential friends is that de-risking involves engagement in a very calculated, strategic way. That this could be the return of a viable engagement strategy. And let's pitch it the way it is, entirely for America's interests. If China benefits too, that's fine, but it's not really about that. It's about how do we allow American policymakers to get comfortable again with some kind of engagement. Decoupling, it's already proven to be infeasible, and it's already proven to be unwise, so we don't have to argue against decoupling. They already know that. The DOD has nowhere else to buy their DJI drone parts but China, okay? So we know that. But what we don't know is how do we get everybody to understand that actually engagement in a smart way, leveraging China's strengths for American interests, could be something that companies both from the U.S. and China can pitch.
Totally agree with you, and I think engagement is better than confrontation, right? So I think try to figure out a way to get there, and I'm talking about potential risk. You always figure out what's my plan A, what's my plan B, maybe plan C as well. So given that our Ruth, our very top attorney here, and from your perspective, from your observations, and see here's the reality right now, and even though there's a lot of obstacle, and but what do you see? What do you see from your practice is what's the current status, talking about Chinese companies doing right now, how they're adapting the environment here? Thank you.
So I happen to be an adjunct professor at Georgetown University as well. And one of the most evil behavior of a country in international trade law, is dumping. So in the WTO, one of the most significant tool is anti-dumping law. So if a country, both of them said, Chinese competitors cut their price 4 times with no profit margin to compete with them. So if a country, in order to have a market share, is willing to lose money for an extended period of time with the currency manipulation, with the government subsidy, and all the capacity, not like a free economy here, to come to other countries to dump their goods. Under the old regime of WTO, you can now impose anti-dumping tariffs. It could be even more than 60%. So from my view, some of the American concerns are legitimate. It's not a deranged Trump saying, okay, 60% is for some goods. Otherwise, American industries will be decimated. So us both, I agree with the both of them. So for the Chinese business who come to America, that is not a critical, have nothing to do with the critical infrastructure, critical technology, you need to start, first of all, try proactively to comply with the international trade norm with a fair price, and then start making your goods here. Making your goods, because America is a very fair country. Make your goods here, respect intellectual property. The problem is both, on both sides. Can they come here freely? No, because the Chinese government has always been a protectionist government. Every single business, practically, in order to come here, they need an approval. So it's not like they want to come, they can come. Having said so, as Shau correctly pointed out, the Chinese is the most resilient and creative people. And at least people on Wall Street, the hardest working, resilient and creative people. We have the best lawyers and accountants helping them. And so the future is unpredictable, but I'm really looking forward to navigating this new reality, which, unless my view is that Trump is seeing all this as a bargaining chip to have China behave in accordance with international norm, because they always had an exception under the WTO. So, I think the businesses need to stay calm. And then we're going to need to find ways to navigate this new time. And the companies who are staying away from Chinese money, you don't need to. Just work with the good lawyers. We work with the definition of control, definition of affiliate. We can work with you and get whatever money that's available. So that's my view.
Great. I think Ruth, you already jumped on to our last questions. And then I would ask the other two panelists. For the future, we like to have a forecast, right? As a businessman, you always want to have a forecast. Over the next 4 or 5 years, or 3 to 5 years, what do you see the geopolitics or business environment, or getting better or getting worse, or it doesn't really matter to you as long as we have a good product, or we're a corporate citizen, we were doing well. What's your take on that? Thank you.
I think short term, in my personal view, is unsettled. There is turbulence in the air. I think we need to embrace that and accept the fact. The best metaphor I can think of is the two largest and greatest economies, U.S. and China. Think of it like in a Boeing aircraft, 2 engines, powerful engines. One is U.S. and one is China. If one engine says, I'm going to go east, and the other engine says, I'm going to go west, what happens to the aircraft? It won't even take off. And all the passengers, it might even crash, right? So we need to have that collaboration to work these 2 engines together and in the common direction to solve this. Then it's a win-win, as opposed to it's not a winners-take-all situation. So I humbly, honestly believe collaboration and partnership is the new leadership.
Great, thank you. I really like that, yeah. Collaboration is the new leadership. Yeah, thank you.
A couple of thoughts. First of all, China has always been a Schrodinger's cat economy, right? Depending on how you look at it, it's either doing extremely well, but from other points of view, it's always had its weak spots. So both will continue to exist. China will, 5 years from now, still look incredibly strong when it comes to its positioning in global trade, global manufacturing, critical technologies of the future. China leads in 53 out of 64 categories of critical technologies, according to the Australian Strategic Policy Initiative. So that story is intact. It's not going to change. That's the macro story. The micro story, I believe, actually benefits from Trump's re-election, because this trade war that will now probably intensify before it lessens is probably going to force Chinese central government to rethink its levels of domestic consumption stimulus. Think about that for a minute. It doesn't really have that many other things it can do. So what is it going to do? It's going to shore up internally. And that's the one obvious That's the one obvious low-hanging fruit that President Xi and his administration have, is they can heavily stimulate I'm talking multi-trillion-dollar stimulus now, guys, not these sort of around the edges things that we've been seeing, but a full-on front howitzer right into like consumption to create a flywheel effect. That could easily happen. If that happens, that's great for China, that's great for the world, that's great for all the people complaining about overcapacity, it's great for all the American companies that are there, it's great for Chinese companies going abroad. So that's probably what I see happening.
Thank you so much. And so we come to the end. I think, as everyone knows, and given the China U.S. superpower and all the businessmen, no business companies wanted to give up any market in those two countries, right? And so as the takeaway, right? And I think for China, I think the Chinese company. Let me maybe do a survey quickly. How many Chinese company here is already in the U.S. or you are thinking about coming to U.S. Still thinking about it? Few of them, right? So I think the takeaway is for the Chinese companies and also for U.S. companies, they still thinking about, okay, maybe for U.S. companies still reinvest back in China. For the Chinese company, still thinking about it, want to come, but have not made the decision yet. Even though we have a TikTok, it's the largest, I think one of the most successful business, Chinese business here in the U.S., and they have a 150 million U.S. dollar customer here in the U.S. and we had 1.5 billion users, globally, but it is still under huge. So already banned by the Biden administration in law, and which is have a deadline January 19, right? Will potentially be banned completely from the U.S. Given those situations, and the Chinese companies still coming, given the e-commerce still coming, and the gaming industry still coming, right? And EV-related companies are still coming, and so I'd like to have all the panelists and to give a one sentence. And what's the takeaway you want advice to give our audience here for the company want to come, not coming, or is already here? And just one sentence for them to take away. Thank you.
Never give up. Be optimistic. America needs you.
I think we should be approaching this new era with new thinking. This is a time for creativity. This is not a time for just saying, oh, it's always been that way. It has to always be this way. You should go back and look at your business. What are the possible cooperation you're not thinking about right now? What are the possible ways to solve problems for the counterpart country? That's what you should be doing. That's what I would recommend.
Well, I think America is the best place for business, so I would definitely encourage Chinese companies, whatever companies you're from, to come to America and do business. And in my view, short term, it's a pain for China and Chinese companies under Trump, but I think it's a long-term opportunity because you see, if you invest in Japan, American company, but then what's going to happen if Japan has some relationship with China? So it's going to be very difficult to implement it. So I would think that China would actively making Chinese companies as well. They're going to be actively expanding to other areas on Earth. So you could see in the South America, they're buying up tons of lands, setting up a lot of companies over there. So I think it's a long-term adjustment and it's a long-term gain.
Thank you. Yeah, there's one paragraph, one sentence, but that's good.
I'll just say one last thing. I'll say along with the company names, the country should be completely deleted. Nobody says Microsoft as a X country's company. So only a few of those companies are given, oh, that's a Chinese company, that's an Israeli company, that's an Indian company, or whatever country it is, right? Every company has global customers. It's trying to solve global customers' unique problems. So the company should be looked as a global company, every single one, from day one of a startup to a multi-billion, multi-trillion-dollar company. So it's a global company.
Thank you so much for that. And for one last, as a summary, and I would recommend that you be a corporate citizen with a top niche product, and you will be successful in the U.S. or in the China in the long run. Thank you so much, everyone. Appreciate it.
Thank you.